I couldn't hear the horn. I couldn't hear anything except breathing, theirs and mine, pressing to one animal sound along the line. The sergeant's mouth moved somewhere ahead, but his words dissolved in the heat, sitting over us like a lid. Sweat stung my eyes and slid under the rim of my helmet. The man to my left chewed a prayer. The man to my right chewed nothing. Someone behind me laughed, thin and fast. "At least the horn man's safe," he said. "Smartest job in camp." It got a brittle ripple. I coughed. The air was tallow, oil, horse, and men. That's what you do in the line. You lie to yourself politely, because the truth makes your knees go soft. "Advance!" Somebody must have said, because the bodies ahead leaned and we all tipped with them. I didn't decide to move. My feet went where the backs in front pushed them. The ground reminded us it was no parade field. Ruts caught my toes, roots snatched, a ridge of dried mud slid. My spear but dug into muck and tried to lever me face first into the shield before me. What a way to die, I thought, strangled by my own strap, while my friends trampled me trying not to be me. We weren't charging. We were shuffling. 1,000 men learning they were a single awkward animal with too many legs. The line rippled where someone lost footing. Another wave bumped forward and filled the gap with bodies. When a man went down, there wasn't room to mourn him. There was only a hard new thing under your boot you pretended was a rock. "Keep your feet," the sergeant had said, "the only good advice. If your feet go, the rest goes. Grip the shield like it's your brother." I repeated it because it was easier than thinking. I wanted to be anywhere, but here. But the world had narrowed to wood on my forearm, leather in my fist, and the sour breath of the man in front. A man stumbled to my left and smashed me with the flat of his shield. Mine kicked inward. My spear skidded and jabbed air. Someone cursed, then laughed. "What else do you do?" We looked mean from far away. I laughed and almost threw up. I swallowed it. Lies have their uses. The sun hammered thin and bright above us. I couldn't see the banner or the horizon, only the back of a helm, and hair plastered dark under the rim. When the line bunched, I caught my breath. When it lurched, I let it go. You don't decide to fight. You get poured into it. One breath you can still turn and run, and the next you're a gear tooth caught. The only decision left is the one your feet make. Forward. We slid another step. Another. I found a patch of dirt instead of mud and called it a blessing. Gripped the shield. I told myself, and I did. The edge bit my palm where the wood had splintered. I picture my father's cartboards and the way you carry weight without thinking. The stink of men thickened, and beneath it, the sharp metal tang that meant steel would be tasting soon. My heart climbed into my mouth and fluttered like a sparrow, but my legs kept time with the bodies around me. Fear rose and tried on a joke's voice. After this, I muttered, "I'm taking up the horn." Nobody heard me. Maybe that was mercy. The first hit came through the shield like a bell. My forearm rang. My teeth did too. The sound was more inside me than outside, and it stole a breath clean out of my chest. Shield smacked shields, edges bit wood, and the front of the world compressed to a few feet of churned earth, boot leather, and eyes behind a slit. I braced the rim against the ground and shoved. Felt another man's weight answer from the other side. An invisible animal locked head to head with mine. My spear point found nothing on the first jab, then scraped the boss, then bit meat with a dull get that traveled up the shaft and into my shoulder. The man on the other side howled. I wanted to feel something about that. But there wasn't room. There was no plan left, only the rule I knew. Stay upright. A body slammed my right hip, and my knee bent. The world tilted. Panic flared white. I stamped my foot back where I wanted it and barked a breath like a dog. A blade skidded on my helm and took a lock of hair with it. The strap burned my chin. I retracted the spear, stabbed again, shorter. The point banged a pauldron, slid, and spat sparks I couldn't see but felt. Someone to my left went down, and the line folded there like wet canvas. For a second I saw sky. Then backs closed it. I wanted to look for him, but the weight in front of me shoved again, and the visor slit filled with another slit, as if the world had been cut into two angry eyes and pushed together. Breathe, block, shove, jab. The words became a wheel, and I tied myself to it. I felt the rim of an enemy's shield climb my own and try to ride over. I drove my edge up and back, bit wood, and twisted until something cracked. A hand reached over the top, grabbed for my helm, and I hammered the wrist with the butt of the spear and heard a knuckle go like a green twig. I was not noble. I was not a banner. I was an ache that moved. The man before me sagged, and another shouldered into his place before he hit dirt. There's always another man. The air screamed with metal. Or maybe that was me. Or all of us. You lose track. A weight landed on my shield, and I crouched and lifted to throw it off. And for a heartbeat, I could see the gaps. Armpit, back of knee, the soft seam under a gorget. My spear kissed one and came away sticky. I didn't watch what fell. Watching is a luxury. The second hit that mattered wasn't steel. It was a thought that I could just curl up, lay down, sleep. I pushed that thought into the same dark corner where I keep the freckle and the river and told it to wait. The press came in waves. When it eased, the ground beneath my boots felt like a drumhead, tight and slick, full of things that should not be underfoot. When it surged, my world shrank further, to my own breath, the tick of my heart, and the rough inside of leather where my thumb rubbed raw. I caught myself holding my breath, and counted 3 and let it out. I could not afford to be dramatic. Drama wastes air. Block, shove, jab, breathe, repeat. Survival 1 second at a time. The crush made liars out of songs. There was no room to draw grand arcs or carve the air with shining steel. My spear became a clothesline for other men's weapons and then an insult to space. I let go when it lodged in someone's kit and pulled a short blade that looked brave on my belt this morning and looked like a kitchen knife now. 5 of ours fell on one of theirs where his footing went a knot of men in wood, and Will that rolled and stamped until the knot stopped moving. Honor is a story you tell where there's an audience. Out here the only story was get home. Half-sorting one fights. Hands up on the blade. Point driven like a nail into a gap. Pommel blows landed like thrown hammers on helms and ear holes. I hooked shield rims and ankles with whatever I could reach. When a man turned his head to shout, I hit the hinge of his jaw with the boss and felt the shock in my elbow. I remember the practice master saying, use the man, not the sword, and I thought I finally understood him. We dragged, tripped, crowded, smothered. Technique was a fine coat you wore to town. In the field, you wore rags that kept you alive. 2 of ours pinned a knight's shield. I stepped in tight and shoved my blade under his gorget and into the meat where neck met chest. His breath touched my face, warm and sour through the visor slit. Then it didn't. I wanted to step back, but there were backplates there, so I stepped sideways and up, over someone's shin, like a man getting out of a crowded bed. From the corners of my eyes, I kept catching flashes. A poleaxe used like a shovel to scoop a man's feet. A mace swung short like a club in a hallway. A farmer's flail wrapping a wrist and yanking the weapon clean. An axe stuck and left, its owner already pulling a dagger because time wouldn't give him his iron back. I heard myself make small working noises, grunts and little gasps as if I were carrying sacks. A friend yelled my name, and I couldn't spare the thought to turn. Someone else yelled again and then swore at me for not answering. I rammed my shoulder into a man's chest and drove him into his mate's, then stamped his instep like I would a loose nail. He folded just enough for me to push my blade under his ice slit, a quick, ugly stab. I did not linger on it. You can't fix what the blade does by feeling sorry. Some fought clean even here. You can tell. Neat, efficient movements, no waste. I envied them the way you envy a man who can sleep anywhere. But crowding ruins grace. Elbows, knees, backs, shields. Every edge became a tool. I jammed my knife into a joint and couldn't get it back, so I left it there and picked up a fallen hammer. It felt like work. I know how to work. I know the feel of a handle in a palm, the arc that ends in a thud, the relief of a job finished, if only for a breath. When I ran out of moves, I shoved. When I ran out of shoves, I held. When I ran out of holding, I screamed and found one more. The weapons around me were not heroes. They were tools. Axes with swollen cheeks and bearded blades that bit deep and stuck, asking for 2 hands and time you didn't have. Spears by the yard, thick as hedges at the start, and then broken to stumps, still useful as spikes and levers. Maces that didn't care where they hit, so long as bone sat under it. Swords were fewer and humbler than songs allow. Short, plain, a good steel nail where a carpenter buys the best. And then there were the farm things turned wicked by need. Flails that rapped and yanked, bills that hooked, forks that became 3 hard arguments. Quality was a rumor you hoped would favor you. The blade a cousin bragged about bent on its second bite. A fine axe sank to the eye into a shield and stayed there like a promise its owner couldn't keep. A spear that had been straight an hour ago wobbled like a reed. Its last foot cracked, the socket trying to spit the head. Physics did not care about pride. Reach beat romance. Leverage beat lineage. Weight beat pretty. I lost count of the times gear failed faster than nerve. My own spear, before I ditched it, snagged a friend's strap and jerked him half around. He bellowed my name with a fury I deserved. Later, a sword nicked a rivet and bent its last inch like a crooked finger. I pressed it against my knee to true it, and almost took my own leg. So I changed how I held things. I choked up. I flipped grips. I used the butt more than the edge. A mace I found sat wrong in the hand until I laced my fingers with its strap and let the loop carry the weight like a bucket. Then it made sense. A man came at me with shining blade, and I met it with wood and iron and angles. I didn't try to win a contest I'd lose. I put a sword into my shield rim and twisted until the edge stuck. He pulled and I pushed, and then his choice was to come close or let go. He came close. The mace did what maces do. There wasn't elegance in it, just the end of a question. I kept moving because the air ahead of me had turned thick with new questions. The best weapon at any moment was the one that did not argue with the space. Sometimes that was a spear stub used like a chisel in a seam. Sometimes it was a rock in a gauntlet. Once it was a dead man's shield, heavier than sin but wide enough to be a door, and I pushed behind it like a plow until I had room to breathe. I stopped thinking about names of the things I held. I thought instead about what they could make happen right now. Fall, falter, flinch, flee. That was the economy of the work, and I paid it with whatever coins I had in my fists. Between pushes, men did repairs like thieves. A strap tied with a bootlace. A split shaft wrapped in rawhide. A dagger kissed across a notch to take a new bite. We lied to our tools the same way we lied to ourselves. One more minute, old friend. Hold together one more shove. And sometimes they did. And when they didn't, our hands learned a new prayer fast. Drop, grab, rip free. Switch grips, survive. My helmet turned into a stove. Breath went in hot and came out hotter. Sweat pooled above my brow, and then chose a moment to sting both eyes at once. Vision narrowed to a slit within a slit. Every exhale bounced back into my mouth, sour and thick, as if I were sharing my own breath with a stranger. I thought about loosening the strap, and then imagined fingers finding that slack and using it to drag me down. I kept it tight and cursed my caution. Fatigue crept in first as suggestion, then a fact. Arms trembled not from fear anymore, but from weight held too long. The shield grew heavy as a wall. The rim's bite turned to a burn. The bruise under turned to a throb with its own pulse. A man brushed my back and left heat like a brand. The air had no edges. It was soup. The world had rules, and they were simple and cruel. If you slip, you fall. If you fall, you disappear into boots. If you disappear, you don't come back. I saw it happen twice within a breath. A foot lost purchase. The man pinwheeled. 3 more tried to catch him and push him flatter. The press rolled over him as if he were a puddle. I changed how I moved. Shorter steps. Knees like springs. No lunges I couldn't get back from. Every choice was tiny. Shift left to get air or plant and let the wave break. Loosen the strap for one honest breath. Or keep it biting and stay on by the helmet. Keep the shield high and burn. Or drop it a hand's width and gamble your face. I picked the options that let me keep my feet. Pride is a luxury. Posture, too. Twice, I nearly went when the ground under my heel rolled. Both times. The only thing that saved me was a man behind me who needed me upright as much as I needed him. We held each other up without consent. A poleaxe scraped my visor, and I felt the teeth in it searching for purchase. I ducked without thinking, and the head clanged off my crown, and set stars dancing in the dark room of the helm. I knelt a heartbeat too long and felt bodies start to bend over me, the current pulling me down. I bounced up, slammed my shield into someone's ribs, and stole his space. The fear that had been large at the start had gotten small, but sharper, like a dart tucked under the tongue. It pricked whenever I hesitated. Heat turned men weird. One puked in his helmet and kept fighting, rattling the bucket like a drunk. Another started laughing and didn't stop, little hiccuping bursts that came with each shove. A third went quiet in a way that was wrong even here and stepped backward out of the press with both hands raised, as if leaving a dance. I didn't see him again. I talked to myself out loud by then. Numbers, prayers, curses, anything to keep the breath steady. The ground is a liar, I said. Don't trust it. Trust your feet. And I did, because I had nothing else left to trust. Somewhere in the long afternoon, direction went missing. North and south become forward and back. Then only push and yield, then only move. Colors turned to mud. Shapes sorted themselves into two kinds, thread and room. The banner was a rumor, the horn a myth. The world was a square foot in front of my boots, and whatever tried to own it. Battle mind took over. That mean little autopilot you train on drills and sweat. Muscle did what thought could not keep up with. I swung when space allowed, shoved when it didn't, ducked when the voice in the spine said duck. A friendly shield cracked me across the ear, and I saw a white flower open and close. I wanted to hit him for it, and then realized I already had. Last wave. Friend and foe shared the same outline. I learned to look for laces, tabards, the way a man swore. Even that failed. More than once I felt my blade hesitate, because the face in front of me looked like mine. Panic travels like gossip. Somewhere down the line a knot ran, and a ripple opened in front of me as men tried not to be the last to know. We braced and shouted and scolded, useless words, cracked voices. A handful turned to run and jammed into those who hadn't decided yet. Then the ground decided for them, and two went down. I threw my weight sideways to close the gap and found myself yelling nonsense, a dog barking at a storm. That's how lines break. Not with a dragon scream, but with a shrug that becomes a tide. I did the math without numbers. If I stayed, I might die here. If I ran, I might die in the back. If I froze, I would die where I stood and take someone with me. The logic of staying won because it was the only choice that didn't feel like a confession. Still, my feet twitched like liars. The body wants to live even if it has to shame you to do it. On our right, a captain with a voice like gravel found a shape for the fear. He pounded his sword on his shield, clang, 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 and gave us a rhythm. Men love rhythms. They give you the feeling something understands what you're doing. We locked the beat and took 3 steps like a door closing. The run on that side stopped. On the left it didn't. I watched 3 men I'd eaten with turn small and far as they chose a different truth. I wanted to hate them and could not. If I had been 2 breaths poorer, I would have been them. By then I had stopped thinking about victory. Outcomes belonged to numbers and nerve, and ours were both frayed. I thought instead about tasks. Make this man in front of me step back. Don't be underfoot. Keep the edge where the faces are. When the push eased for a moment, I found a low wall of bodies and leaned my shield on it and stood very straight, so the tremor in my arms would look like pride. A crow landed on a helmed head and cocked its own. I hated it for its calm. Then the wave came again, and I forgot the bird and my name and most of the reasons I had ever come here. Armor lied too, but in a kinder voice. It turned cuts, sure, until it didn't. A mace found bone through it. Mail bit flesh where it folded. Plate spread force and still drove it into the meat that mattered. Edges did ugly neat work. Blunt blows did neat ugly work. A man could look whole and be ruined, and another could look ruined and make a home. I learned to read breaks by sound. A radius sings different from a rib. A helm hit square gives a church bell note. A glancing blow hisses. Blood has a smell that says danger. Sweat has a smell that says effort. Fear has a smell all its own, sharp and green. I didn't want these lessons, and took them anyway. The first time a friend went slack against me, I thought he'd slipped. Then I saw the red creeping down his side under the plates like dye-through cloth, and realized his breath had changed, short, surprised, apologetic. I dragged him back 3 steps by his strap, and another man took my space without a nod. We bound what we could with belts. We stuffed linen into holes, as if a man were a leaking barrel. No medics came. The only tent with skill had a line you did not want to stand in, and the men who went in came out quieter, or didn't. I saw a thigh open like a slit purse. I saw a forearm dented inward where nothing cut it, and the man stared at it as if looking at a bent tool, puzzled that it would not obey. A boy pressed a hand against his own neck and made the sound a kettle makes just before it boils over. He sat down and didn't get up. Another walked in a neat circle with a calm face while blood fell off his elbow in coins. Shock is a trickster. It lets you stay on your feet so you can fall farther from help. When it was me, it was small at first, a numbness across 2 fingers, then a bright ache along the ribs where a boss had kissed. I told myself I was fine, and then I wasn't. My breath wouldn't go where I wanted it. A friend, maybe the grinder from the line, maybe someone else, jammed a belt under my arm and pulled until the world went narrow and white. Breathe through it, he said, and I did, because I had a job and jobs don't forgive delays. I went back in. What else was there? In the lulls, the field turned into a bad infirmary. Men with black nails heated in iron for cautery. The hiss of it on flesh made the stomach try to leave the body. We poured water where we should not have and prayed. Some wounds clotted because God is merciful or because the body is stubborn. Others did not. And those men took off their belts and rings and gave them to whoever's hand was steady enough to take them. I learned to look away and learned not to, both at once. What scared me more than blood was what came after it. Flies found us before priests did. Dirt worked into the edges of cuts like it had opinions. Old scars on older men told the truth. Puckered lines, missing fingers, a limp that never left. Everyone knew a man who lived 3 days after a small hole and died of fever on the 4th. I tried not to count myself toward any of those stories and failed. The hush came like a drop cloth. No signal, no trumpet, just a press thinning and a space opening around my shoulders where there had been none. For a moment I kept swinging at air, because my body didn't trust quiet. Then my legs made a decision without asking me, and I was sitting on my heels, helmet still on, breathing like a bellows. My hand shook little enough to be useful and too much to be brave. The ground was steel, leather, splinters, and bodies. And my whole comes first. Fingers, 1, 2, 3, 4. Hands, 2. Feet, both. Blood, mine, there's hard to say. I rolled my shoulder and felt something complain in a way that suggested it would cost me later. Later is a town you love after today. Men sat where they stood, some laughing, some crying, some hollow-eyed. The ones with jobs started their jobs. Water carriers went out and came back older. Runners found captains. Captains found numbers. Priests found the loudest suffering first, which felt fair until you noticed the quiet ones. We scavenged because living needs things. It felt like stealing from a church and like shopping at market. A better knife here, a strap there, a cloak. I told myself I'd pay for all of it later with prayers I knew I wouldn't say. We found our friends, or didn't. We said names like questions and got answers like shrugs. At the grim tent of line, already had opinions about who might leave it under their own power. I went because a belt had turned part of me numb, and because a man with a voice that took no argument took my elbow and turned me toward it. The surgeon's world was order drawn over chaos with string and blood. He glanced, decided, cut, bound, moved you. He cursed dirt and liars. Hot iron smoked. A man passed out mid-scream, and we were all a little grateful for him. Charcoal went gray, then black again, then gray. At some point I took my helmet off. Steam left my hair. The breeze touched my scalp like a hand. I looked at the field and saw more leather than grass. Flies had a kingdom. A boy sat cross-legged murmuring to a body that was probably his brother or maybe a stranger who looked like one. A horse stood with a spear through it until someone had mercy. I drank water that tasted of iron and skin and did not care. When orders came, they were ordinary. Clean, bind, stack, carry, count. We buried who we could and said the words we remembered. We left the rest to weeds, weather, and the people who come after us to say it was glorious. I don't have room for that word anymore. I have room for names, for the man who gave me his belt, and the one I shoved upright, and the one who ran, because the world asked too much at once. I have room for the quiet question I keep asking. What does it cost to keep calling yourself a good man? Tonight, I will eat if I can, drink if I must, and sleep if my hands unclench. Tomorrow, if there is one, we mend what can be mended and lie to ourselves enough to get back in line. Life goes on for the living. That is the mercy and the curse.